What's up everybody, I'm Mongoose, you are awesome, and Core has released a bit of lore for Gadget. You can find the lore by going to the Metabuff Discord linked in the description below and check the announcements tab. I thought it would be fun to do a Myths from Monolith style video about the lore. I'll be reading the lore, setting it to some music, and rolling the animation's epic release for Gadget in the background. The story was written by Nas with help from Core's lore team. I hope you enjoy. The Collector. At long last, the Shellshock armor was ready and more than capable of meeting Gadget's needs. The external microphones granted her surround sound environmental awareness. She'd included an array of optical sensors that added infrared and night vision modes, with outputs continuously streaming to a heads-up display. It was an understatement to say she wasn't dressed for the occasion when she arrived on Agora. Her jeans and tank top had done nothing to protect her. The most important of all her additions was the protection the shell provided. No more would she have exposed limbs and midriff. The armor was great when she had to tussle with beasts of the plains while on a hunt. It enhanced her survival in the arena. But the defensive capabilities weren't what brought her the greatest comfort. Before she had the Shellshock suit, the gales of the mountaintop battleground were brutal. For almost 2 years she'd been at the mercy of those chill winds, with nothing but the tattered remains of the clothes she'd worn to Agora. She held more than a little resentment for Aurora's ability to disregard the bitter cold of Monolith. So the most valued part of her new gear was the integrated radiant heating system. With a word, she could bump up the heat inside the new suit. The sound and force of the Monolith winds still triggered memories of suffering in the cold. But now whenever the trauma triggered, she turned up the heat another degree to comfort herself. But the winds here on Monolith wouldn't distract from her goal today. Total focus, timing, and partnership were necessary. She fought hard through the match, more driven than ever. She surged forward with a wave of minions as the remnants of the next lane's inhibitor descended into its stall. A few more plasma bolts and the sound of the familiar klaxon meant the enemy core was about to fall. She spun away from the core and deployed a speed gate which coursed with crackling energy.
"Now, TB!"
she yelled to her friend. Gadget rushed through the gate, then straight towards the nearest super minion. She reached out an arm to catch the construct by the waist. When her hand caught hold, she swung around to flank it, and then used her and Rosie's weight to leverage it back. Twin Blast followed. He jumped, added his rocket dash to the surge from the gate, and kicked the minion high on the chest plate. The added force from his accelerated speed was enough to topple the automaton back into the woman. When the construct's feet came up, Rosie shot her clamp to the ground to support the load Gadget bore. The enemy core erupted in a shower of light and shards, and one last time a familiar command boomed all around them. Proceed to your reward. As Gadget strained under the weight of the minion, she thought,
"You have no idea."
Core initiated the teleportation sequence that would send everyone back to where they'd been before it summoned them for the start of the match. As the teleport ended, Gadget shoved the minion left. She rolled right to get out from under it. Her impact on the ground caused leaves and debris to erupt into the air. She braced herself for the pain she knew was about to come. It wasn't the impact of the fall, her armor was padded well enough to absorb almost any impact. The teleportation from Monolith's heights to the belly of her base camp meant an unavoidable and agonizing change in atmospheric pressure. She gritted her teeth and held her breath until her ears popped and the pain subsided. After the woman lay still for half a minute, Rosie swung around to her face. The AI let out a series of buzzes and whirs as an expression of concern for her partner. The Shellshock mask retracted and wisps of fresh air stroked Gadget's face. She took a deep breath and welcomed the refreshing smell of wet soil and foliage that meant she was home. When her eyes opened, she smiled at her mechanical appendage.
"We finally got one, girl. Now let's find out what's in one of these suckers."
Rosie spun her clamp and emitted a joyous whistle. Gadget rose to her feet, knocked the debris from her armor, and surveyed the base camp.
Tools. What was I working on before the match?"
Rosie let out a short burst of energetic beeps that swung around as she activated her light. The beam focused on a stripped-down harvester at the outskirts of camp.
"Thank you, girl."
Gadget reached a hand up and patted what served as Rosie's head before she set off across the clearing. Sure enough, her tool basket was at the foot of the harvester. She knelt and flipped open the lid to inventory the handmade tools.
All there.
She grabbed the handle of the basket and took her first step back across camp. Her progress halted at the clamor of metal cascading to the ground. She looked down at the sprawl of tools, then rotated the basket up, only to find a hole where the grass weave at the bottom had decayed through.
"Sparks! I keep forgetting to make a proper toolbox."
She let out a deep sigh. Rosie trilled and rubbed Gadget's cheek.
"No, I'm not mad at myself, just frustrated. We've spent so much time on survival, I don't have any left for conveniences." I'll make a toolbox soon, but right now all my attention has to go to the collector.
She picked up several tools and cradled them to the crook of her other arm when Rosie set a siege minion breastplate down in front of her, before turning to look for the woman's approval. Gadget chuckled and shook her head.
Thanks. I need reminding every now and then that not every solution has to be complicated.
She piled all the tools on the breastplate and hauled them to the now dormant super minion. Night fell unnoticed while she stripped down the construct. At some point she fell asleep at her workbench, a frequent occurrence for the Omega native. There was no such thing as a regular sleep schedule for the planet's survivors. The 40-hour days on Agora were taxing for the sturdiest of them, torment for most, and then there was her oldest friend. Twin Blast could sleep anywhere at any time. He could ignore all the noise Agoran wildlife had to offer. At least he could thank his street-living youth for that. Rest when you can and instinctively tell the difference between noises that are threats and those that aren't. Long before dawn, she woke to a delightful aroma. She opened her eyes to a steaming bowl of stew in front of her. She began to rub the sleep out of her eyes as she turned her attention to Shin-bi, who halted, emptying the contents of an identical bowl.
Good morning, sleepyhead.
Shin-bi offered a generous smile to her campmate.
Well, almost morning. I don't know why I still say that, when really we don't wake up at morning at all around here. But whenever one of us wakes up, I just feel like I need to say it.
Gadget mused that she may never get used to Shin-bi's positive attitude, but was grateful to have the companionship.
Good morning. Smells like you had a good hunt.
She grasped the spoon and set up to begin exploring the contents of the bowl. There was meat for certain, some manner of vegetable, and the scent of an herb that somehow reminded her of home.
This is safe to eat, right?
She raised a questioning eyebrow at the younger woman.
Well, we've eaten lots of dingus before.
Shin-bi was fond of the name she'd given the small dinosaurs that wandered their territory.
And the big vegetable things in here are something they led me to. Right before I sent the wolves, the dingus were digging the dirt and eating whatever they were digging up. After the kill, I checked what they were doing and found these root plants. They're like potatoes, but really sweet. I figured if they were safe for the dingus to eat, and dingus are safe for us to eat, they must be okay.
Shin-bi's speech was faster than normal, but the reasoning was sound. Gadget took a bite of the stew, the savory and sweet flavor registered and the warmth spread through her. She couldn't help but close her eyes and revel in the experience. After a lifetime of conveniences in Obeda City, her life of struggle on the surface of Agora had taught her to appreciate the simple things. A warm bowl of stew with a balance of flavors and something new to break the doldrums of their regular fare was something to give proper acknowledgement to. When she opened her eyes, she recognized an expression that meant there was more Shin-bi wanted to say. With the awareness that Shin-bi wouldn't hold back long, she continued to eat.
They might be magic. The roots,
the girl spouted. Gadget made a concerted effort not to reveal the reaction she felt. Every few days the girl would bring something else back to base camp with the suspicion it might be magic. She knew it was compulsive for Shin-bi to want to find magic, to need to find it. The young woman was a shaman, a person of magic in body and soul. The energy of Agora was so different from that of Latha that she struggled to connect with the natural forces of the planet. Even so, she was still optimistic in her pursuit of that familiar connection.
What makes you think that?
Gadget asked. As the last of the words passed her lips, she began to feel something.
I think it's like a super speed plant or something. My thoughts are fast, my heart is racing, and my skin is warm all over. I have so much energy.
The volume and pitch of her voice went up with the excitement. Gadget smiled as she felt the cited symptoms grow in her.
Oh my, this is better than magic. You found something more precious than Kyojorium. You found caffeine. Oh, bless you, sweet woman. My lifeblood has been restored. Please tell me this plant isn't rare.
She took another spoonful into her mouth.
Oh no, not rare at all. It grows everywhere. I didn't know these plants had anything important below the surface. I'm going to start paying better attention to the animals and see what other things they can lead us to. I feel silly it took me so long to think of it. I mean, hello, shaman.
She used both hands to make gestures pointing back to herself. Gadget swallowed, then attempted to comfort the girl.
Don't feel bad. We weren't prepared for this.
She spread out her arms and looked around, as though the action could somehow embrace the full meaning of life on Agora.
I know I can't fully understand what it's like to be a shaman thrown into a world where you have to learn magic all over again, but I know how hard it's been for you. Agora's energy is nothing like what your gifts and training prepared you for. It's just a matter of time and you'll know everything about nature here too.
Gadget paused and took the opportunity to redirect the conversation.
Speaking of which, I need those special talents.
She grabbed an intricate piece of technology from the workbench.
This resonator is from the Super Minion.
She thumbed at the disassembled construct next to them.
This is the piece we needed to get the collector online. I need you to see if you can channel the Agoran energy into it.
She held the device up for Shin-bi to see.
I'm not very good at connecting to it yet. except when Core has us in the arena.
The girl's face showed her reluctance.
I know it's been a struggle, but I've seen you do it from time to time when we're hunting up resources or exploring ruins. I know I can finish the collector if we tune this resonator to the Agoran energy.
She gestured with the device again.
When we get the collector going, I'll reverse engineer Core's fabrication process. We'll go from a constant survival struggle to building a life for ourselves. Then I could teach our friends to do it for their base camps.
She paused and looked across the camp. Components from dozens of minions were sorted into piles all along the perimeter, and the smaller pieces filled makeshift buckets fashioned from minions' heads. Here and there were parts she'd scavenged from harvesters, towers, inhibitors, and even a handful of metal and crystal core shards.
If I can get the collector going, I can start fabricating my own components instead of being limited to just these parts. I could build a vehicle to bridge the distance to get you to Jeanette.
Shin-bi inhaled sharply. She thought about seeing Jeanette outside of the confines of the arena, then announced,
I know I can do it!
She smiled and reached out a demanding hand for the component. She took the resonator and left for the grove, her favorite place to meditate and connect with the nature of Agora. The morning sun was shining bright by the time she returned, beaming with pride as she held the resonator high. The device radiated a burning orange light. Rosie spotted Shin-bi first and let out a whistle and shake to get Gadget's attention. When the woman saw the orange light of the resonator, she felt a surge of hope expanding her chest. This could be it. This might be the moment everything changed for them, and in turn for the rest of the Agoran survivors. If she could get this to work, they'd have a constant renewable energy source. This could grant the ability to create what they need and bring stability to their lives.
I'm so proud of you, Shin-bi. I knew you could do it.
Within 2 hours, Gadget had the resonator fitted to her creation, but then she took a seat on the ground in front of it. She used her wrist comp to run calculations, erase the results, and then run them again. Over and over, she ran the power and attunement configurations to ensure they were correct. Eventually, she flipped her wrist to snap the display shut and turned to yell across the camp.
We're ready!
The young woman double-dashed across the camp to join Gadget at the device.
So how's it work?
Gadget opened her mouth and then paused. She had to adapt her tech speak to Shin-bi's comprehension level.
Harvesters used to gather amber, right? They drew it from the ground with massive machines that reached deep below the surface. Then when Core started putting us on Monolith, we got to see the amber links. Those worked on a different principle. They drew the amber from the whole environment instead of direct connection. It's like energy conduction versus radiation.
Shin-bi gave an uncertain nod, but her scrunched up eyebrows said she didn't get it yet. Gadget continued.
Core's been keeping the real power of Agora hidden from us. The life force of energy, or whatever that makes this planet unique, is the Ember. Everything I've learned from the tech and from what Haru's passed along tells me Core relies on Ember. It uses Ember to rebuild towers, construct a steady stream of minions, and forge the items it gives us during a match. If we can control Ember, we can do the same. You with me so far? I think so. We need Ember to make things the way Core does, but we don't have a way to get it. Right, with Harvester and Amberlink components, I've built an Amber Collector. It can tap into the physical and ambient amber in the environment. But if it's tuned to Ember instead of Amber...
She let the line trail off and made a leading gesture with her hand.
It becomes an Ember Collector!
Eyebrows no longer scrunched, Shin-bi beamed with joy at her realization of the concept.
You got it, and without your magical gifts it wouldn't be possible.
Gadget paused to appreciate the moment as she observed her campmate's joy. She and Rosie had been alone in this region before Shin-bi arrived. While Gadget didn't want people around, Shin-bi turned out to be a good campmate and survival partner. Despite her initial reservation and trust issues, she was grateful for the girl's company.
You know, I think we landed in the same area of Agora for a reason. We needed each other, so we could help everyone else. What do you say we fire this baby up?
Gadget slapped the outside of the collector.
Oh wait!
Shin-bi exclaimed.
What time is it? We should remember this, you know, for the new history we're making.
Gadget flipped open her wrist display.
We only have a solar time here, but back in Omega City, it's 8:59.
She took a deep breath, exhaled, and shoved the primer rod into position. Gears and mechanisms moved externally, and the sounds revealed the same happening within. Lights began to sequence below the ember chamber on the collector. After a few seconds, the machine's clicking and clanking settled into an even tone and the machine began to hum. A deep, thunderous boom erupted from somewhere in the distance. The ground and trees shook from the force. The shaking of the canopy created a sound like a giant wave crashing upon the shore. A cascade of leaves started a lazy descent to the ground. The campmates spun to look toward the origin of the disturbance. Shin-bi spotted it first. A beam of some sort rose at an accelerated rate through the atmosphere. Look, she pointed. Gadget activated her shell-shock mask to zoom her view into the phenomenon. It appeared to be both light and liquid, but thick. and radiating purple and black. How could darkness radiate? As the beam left the atmosphere, a second shockwave blasted through the air. Clouds were dispersed by the disruptive force of the shockwave. The two women, awestruck, were unable to divert their gaze from the sight. Rosie interrupted their focus with excited whirring and whistling. She grabbed the collector and began to pull in order to drag Gadget toward it. "Sparks!" Gadget yelled. She spun to face the collector and yanked out the activation rod. The device fell silent and the lights dimmed. When she turned back around, the beam was still there.
"What did we do?"
Shin-bi's voice exposed the fear and confusion Gadget hadn't heard in a long time. Gadget performed a quick mental inventory of the parts in the collector. She visualized the activation and shutdown sequences. She reviewed her calculations. There was no way. She retracted her mask.
"This wasn't us. It couldn't be. The collector doesn't put anything out, it draws things in. Something else is going on."
She turned her gaze back to the disruption. Several points in the upper atmosphere erupted into black and purple disks, their color matching that of the beam in the distance. The disks began to expand, accompanied by deafening noises as though the sky itself were being torn apart. Purple light began to congeal at the edges and work its way in on each dark mass. The light refined into wavering patterns, forming symbols. When the dark masses got big enough, Gadget didn't have to wonder who was responsible. She recognized the glyph that grew within each massive portal.
"Gideon,"
she said. Her voice seethed with contempt. When she saw the first great sphere begin its descent from the portal, she knew life on Agora was about to change. As far as I know, that was the first bit of lore we've gotten from Metabuff, and it's an impressive story that attempts to shine a bit of light on what happens outside the arena. There are hints of a previous disaster that led to our heroes being stranded all across Agora. We'll have to stay tuned to see how the story pans out, and if they are going to explain a little more about what brought everyone to Agora and why. This is Mongoose signing off. You guys, have a good one. Mangoose!